Good evening, guys. Thanks for joining in on a Tuesday evening. I hope your week is going good. We are already into the Diwali week, and I hope we all are very excited about Diwali, and especially this time because I feel pandemic has added a different flavor to this festival this time. So this week we have a couple of events lined up. This event is the first event of this week, and we have another event following on Thursday. But talking about this event, so this event is very what you can say, after a long time we are coming back and doing this event, which is very much centric to growth, specific about growth, not talking about any particular vertical as such, but growth in all around general thing. Today we have with us Ankit Purohit, who is the director of growth marketing at LiveSpace. And just to summarize a little bit about Ankit, so he's a self-taught marketer and started his career with an early startup called Blink, and moved on to LiveSpace, where he started the digital marketing and growth practice from scratch. Though he has largely been into growth and marketing space, he would like to call himself a first principle problem solver because he is no expert but like to keep learning as often and as much as possible. Um, Welcome, Ankit. I hope you are doing really good. It's been long that we have been chatting for a while to make this event a big success and finally do this event. So I'm glad that this is happening finally. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks, Ayush, for the kind words, and thank you all of you who've kind of taken your time out to join on a weekday and weekday after finishing off your long routine. So, without further ado, I think I should just get started with my conversation.
Ankit,
Uh,
I guess your camera went off. Yeah.
did it? Okay. There's some.
Yeah.
Is it fine?
Yeah.
You guys can see my screen now.
Yes. All right. All the best.
Okay. Great. Great. Okay. So, uh, so today's topic, guys, is how does one model your company's growth, right? And it's very evident that I'm going to talk about growth models, which a lot of you might be familiar with. Uh, but this is how I'm roughly going to structure this conversation. So first of all, I'll just talk about a quick introduction about myself. Then I'm going to start at a really high level and talk about what is the core purpose of all the growth efforts that we're kind of putting in. All of us are really passionate enthusiasts who want to grow companies. So I'm just going to talk about at this at a very high level. Then I'm going to talk about how to use a growth model because that is where things become a bit more tricky, right? We might have a model, but we don't use it properly. So that's what I'm going to cover. And then I'm going to touch upon a small approach to build a growth model. I'm going to show a sample growth model to you guys. And at the end, I'm going to workshop a growth model and build one from scratch for you all. And at the end of this conversation, we are going to end with a bunch of questions and answers, which I think Pratyaksh already have a question for me. So I'll wait for that one to come up. So
Yeah.
yeah, here's a little bit of introduction about myself. I started my school at MICA in 2013 to 15, where I really kind of learned the basics of marketing. Uh, Moved on to a digital marketing agency where I had a very short stint uh, called Position Square, which was largely into the B2B marketing space. And I would really say that this is the place where I learned the fundamentals of digital marketing as such. My job here was to do reporting and stuff, and what I really got to understand is how different clients kind of look at the same funnel, look at the same metric, but from a different point of view. Uh, after this stint at Position Square, I moved on to Blinge, which was a very small startup. It was a 5-member team when I joined the company, and my job over there was literally to start off digital marketing from scratch. Was to kind of get the first order kicking in, and I would say that I really learned tinkering with digital marketing as such too. And this is actually the stint which gave me maximum amount of learning about what digital marketing can help you achieve. Uh, Moving on to LiveSpace, I moved on to LiveSpace in 2016, and that has been a fairly long stint from 2016 to 2020, and still counting. So in 2016, what I really thought was that I'm actually done with digital marketing, so I should try out something which is offline marketing. So I joined Livspace for an offline marketing role, and I remember, doing a bunch of radio ads, billboards, some brand marketing campaigns, some partnerships as well. And I remember failing miserably. And that is when I kind of decided that I should be really focusing on digital marketing, which I have some expertise in, and moved on to start digital marketing practice from scratch. And from then onwards, I think from 2000, I think somewhere late 2016 or early 2017, what I've really been able to witness at Livspace and kind of contribute to the company's growth was something around 15 to 16x growth, right? And that's something which has really given me some amount of learnings and what I'm trying to share with you all. So starting off, what's the purpose of all the growth efforts that we kind of put in, right? I think all of us, like, we are all passionate individuals, and we are all in it for some true authentic growth, and probably seeing that grow, that graph go up kind of gives us a kick, and probably that is why we are in. And I would like to think about it myself. Um, Maybe I'm in it because the growth curve really excites me, right? Uh, but what's very important is to figure out, what is that authentic growth that we can drive. So there are two types of growth. So if I just talk about interior design and Livspace per se, uh, when I saw Livspace in 2016, 2017, we were a very small startup, and the behavior of people searching for home interiors online was not really that much, right? And with time, what I've really seen is that a lot of people are now searching for Livspace and are now searching for home interiors online, right? So uh, and that brings me to the point that any product or any solution has a natural adoption rate, right? But what does authentic growth look like, or what does authentic growth do to this natural adoption? Is that it really helps us stay ahead of the curve and manifest itself in the true growth potential of the company. So this graph that you see, the delta between these two graphs are actually, that is actually the true purpose of growth, I would say, right? And when we all kind of dabble around with growth efforts and growth initiatives within our company, what we really want to kind of focus on is a growth model, which helps us navigate through our growth efforts. It helps us stay focused on what we should really focus on and what we should really ignore. Because no matter how big you are, how small you are, you are always going to be crunched with the number of resources, with the number of features that you can develop, right? So it makes a whole lot more sense to kind of use this compass in all our growth efforts to prioritize and to understand how are we going to move the needle, right? uh, Now coming to the next agenda, like how do we actually use the growth model? I'm going to spend a lot of a bit of time over here to kind of talk about each of these 4 points. Yeah. uh, so this is actually a hockey stick curve. Hello, am I audible, guys?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So this is actually a hockey stick curve, and I believe that all of us really like a curve like this, right? But the mistake that most of us make is that we try to focus on the inflection point, the point where the growth started, right? Uh, and I've personally witnessed this within my company itself, that uh, in our company, most of the people come back to me and ask, "Hey, Ankit, what really happened in this particular month when you kind of hit the inflection point?" But I always keep telling everyone that it's not that one thing that we did. It's a bunch of things that we did before hitting that inflection point, and a bunch of things that we did after that to kind of sustain the growth, right? And this leads me to another point, that any tactical advice or any tactics or tips are never going to help you grow, because growth is really a sum of a lot of small efforts, like we see in this graph, right? You need those small efforts to help you reach to the inflection point, and you also need those small efforts or those small feature changes to keep that growth sustaining, right? And hence growth is a sum of a lot of small parts, and is not one or two tactics that give you a 15-20% boost in your conversions. uh, the next point is that what works for your peers, or what works for your friends in the industry might not really work for you, because your business is unique, your audience is unique, your user journeys are completely unique, your UI UX is completely unique, right? So it makes more sense to just focus on what you are doing, what your users are doing, and hence iterate on that. And the third reason is that tips and tricks don't really work in this ecosystem, because all the tools that we keep working on have a very high rate of change. If you look at Facebook, if you look at LinkedIn, if you look at Google, all of these three platforms within last 3 to 4 years of my digital marketing career at Livspace have kind of changed multiple folds, right? What used to work on Facebook does not work anymore. What used to work on LinkedIn does not work anymore, right? So it, in the context of these three factors playing a very important role to growth, I think what we should really focus is that we need a process. We need a process for achieving a growth like this. And that is exactly what a growth model helps you do, right? A growth model helps you build a process which does not make you rely on tactics, and makes you rely on your review cycles. How often do you review your user journeys? How often do you review your search engine marketing? How often do you review your SEO efforts, right? So this is the first point where growth model helps you. uh, Coming to the second point, right? What I've seen based on my experience is that growth has actually been used in multiple places as synonymous to acquisition. But I want to kind of explain this to you, that growth does not mean only acquisition. Most of the companies, especially startups, they try to think that in order to grow your business and kind of get there fast, all you need to do is you need to drive enough traffic, or you need to get enough conversions, and that is it, right? But that's not really how it is, because uh, a growth might function in two different ways depending on the kind of business models that you have. If you are a, a pure product or kind of a platform like Pinterest, you might have a growth loop, right? You might have a growth loop where you are acquiring a new user uh, based on the content that you already have on the platform. You make that user experience the core value of the platform and create some more content for you, right? And then you use the same content generated by the user to get another user, to acquire another user, and that functions like a loop and has a compounding effect. But actually there would be a lot of contents around growth loops out there, because it's very popular in Silicon Valley. But uh, this fundamental does not really apply to a lot of companies, especially for a company like Livspace. We don't really have a loop, because we have a funnel. We have funnel of number of people who we acquire, number of people who we qualify, number of people who we reactivate, and so on and so forth. So growth really functions for a lot of companies like funnels. So we always need to figure out what is the perspective of growth for our own business model, and hence model this and hence try to build a growth model accordingly. Today, what I'm going to talk about and what I'm going to focus this conversation around is actually a funnel driven growth, and not really a growth loop related growth. Uh, and not only growth needs to be looked at differently, but also growth organizations need to be looked at differently, because you have one function which cuts across these four different functions, right? You have in a growth team, you really need a product manager, you need someone from the marketing team, you need the data to be accurate, you need engineers to kind of develop those features. So growth really sits in between all of these four functions. And what really happens is that when you have four different teams who have completely different methods of thinking on how things should be working, they are working on your entire funnel, and all of them kind of keep coming up with ideas which are unique, which are unique according to the way of thinking that they have. But how do we really prioritize all of those ideas? And when we talk about prioritization, we typically follow these frameworks, which is ICE and RICE. So ICE and RICE both are very popular frameworks. I think most of you would know about this, but ICE is basically measured as impact multiplied by confidence multiplied by ease or divided by effort, right? Impact of the particular feature that you are trying to build, the confidence that you have to kind of achieve that impact, and the amount of effort or the ease to build that product or to build that feature. At times, companies would want to prioritize more on the number of people who are going to experience this feature, and hence they add a reach component to it. But what these features, what these frameworks actually fail in doing is basically they don't really tell you how much are you going to move the needle, because an impact score out of 10 is not going to tell me how much our growth efforts are going to impact our DAU, MAU, or our revenues, right? And that is where a growth model helps us. Growth model really, in this scenario, it really helps us calculate and project true business impact for all our growth efforts, right? I believe most of you guys have gotten into a situation where you wake up someday and you just are very confused and perplexed because everything seemed to be working till yesterday, and you don't know what the hell happened right now. Your account is kind of broken, you're still figuring out, and what you do is you spend a lot of time doing the RCA, and then spend a couple of days with to come up with some hypothesis. At times you're not able to do that because you have some missing data, your data is not really structured. A lot of times the other way around is also true, right? Something just starts working out of the way, right? But you don't really know what exactly is working, and this is actually what growth model again helps you do, right? It helps you do a detailed RCA on what exactly is happening. If you are seeing a drop in your conversions by 5% or 10%, which channels are contributing to that drop? Is it only coming from one channel? Is it coming from multiple channels? Has Does it have something to do with with a phenomena like COVID? If you're seeing, so we had a very interesting case where our conversions, the number of people who are searching for home interiors suddenly shot up after uh, the lockdown ended. uh, and we were really trying to wonder what exactly was happening in our ecosystem. And using growth model, it hardly took 5 minutes to understand that okay, the number of people who are searching for home interiors has gone up, and that is what is leading to the impact in conversions. The second thing which I think growth model will help you do is it will help you prioritize and learn quickly about your A/B testing efforts and your feature launches. You don't need to do specific analysis about your A/B testing. You just feed things into the model, and it will help you understand how much is your next feature or is your next test going to impact your DAU or your only metric that matters. Uh, and project it if it really works out, right? Uh, the other thing I think most of you would be familiar with the OKR principle, which is called objectives and key results. A lot of companies use it, and it was initially started by Google. But in order to set up the right OKRs for digital marketing teams, I've honestly struggled a lot in this space because you don't really know what exactly should we set our OKRs on. But a growth model really helps us focus on the input metrics, because uh, input metrics are what your team can control. If you want to increase your conversions from, let's say, what you can really control is how do you create your ads, or how do you target. You can't really control conversions directly. So setting your OKRs on input metrics are something which is allowed by the growth model, and I think is a very impactful feature of the growth model. And hence, if you do all of these things, it helps you build a system. It helps you build a growth ecosystem which is really scalable, repeatable, and predictable. These are, I believe, like very very key to growth teams, because if we are nailing our growth teams in these three parameters, I think we have done the job. It's more likely a process which is going to get us the growth that we require. And and a growth model, following a growth model is kind of the founding stone for enabling scalability, repeatability, and predictability in your systems. Now, I really like this quote by Bruce Lee, right? You need to absorb what is useful in life. You need to discard what is not, and add what is uniquely your own. This quote is true for your life. This quote is true for your professional life as well. And again, growth model really helps us do this as well. It helps us be a bit more unique about how we think, because there is no right or wrong to growth models. It's just a way of, how you would try to imagine your user journeys. It would be completely different compared to, the way I would try to imagine your user journey, right? So hence it's very important to note that growth models are also unique from the point of view that they're being created at. There is no one rule book that anyone should follow, right? So now, coming to how do we build a growth model, right? This approach, I've just put it down to kind of summarize what I will be doing, but I don't think that this approach note really does justice to it. So I will actually demonstrate how to make a growth model, but just spend some time reading through it. In order to model the growth of your company, what you really need to figure out that uh, what is that one output metric, or what's the most impactful metric that you measure in your organization. Is it conversions? Is it revenue? Is it daily active users, or something else, right? What you need to do after that is you need to understand the variables that kind of impact this metric. These variables might be the channels which are kind of giving you these conversions. It might be the features that are giving you these conversions. Most likely, I've seen that these are channels which are giving you these conversions. But but as a next step, you kind of build out some equations with the variables and the output metrics, and then you zoom into each of the variables and understand the inputs or the control levers which drive the variables. Uh, and then you repeat the process until a point where you can't zoom in further, right? And that is how you build a growth model. I can understand this explanation might be a bit more difficult to understand, and that's how that is the reason I've written the last point. You can't just do it by writing equations. You need to open up an Excel sheet and just putting all of this down. So let us take an example of an edtech company. An edtech company has a typical flow, which is, you go to the website, you schedule a free class. Uh, After scheduling a free class, you attend a free class. Uh, and probably everyone is not going to attend the free class, right? Out of some people who attend the free class, some people go to the sales team, and salespeople call those people, and they qualify these leads. Out of these leads that the sales team qualifies, some of them end up converting at the end, right? This is a very very basic flow. I've just made it to kind of explain you guys a very simple growth model. And now let us try to make a growth model. So in this case, I think I'll just keep referring back to this view, this flowchart, to kind of explain you how I'm arriving at the metrics. In this business flow, the most impactful metric we see is the total number of conversions that this edtech company gets. Uh, what is the funnel stage which comes just before conversions? The funnel stage which comes just before conversions is basically the sales qualification, the number of leads that are qualified with the sales team. You enter it over here. Uh, Before sales qualification, you have, if you go back in the same route, you have a number of people who attended the free class. Maybe let us call these leads as qualified leads, and the total number of people who have scheduled a free class. And these are actually all the leads that you've got. So let us just call them leads, qualified leads, sales qualified leads, and final conversions. Before a user has filled up a lead, the user would be at a stage of a session, right? User would have been coming to the website and has created a session under his user ID. So this is how our top level funnel really looks like. Okay. Now, in order to kind of generate this funnel, what you have really done is you have spent some amount of money, and these are the ratios, these are the cost metrics that you have calculated, these are the funnel ratios that you've calculated to kind of conclude about the user journey at each of these stages. Now, if you have to further zoom in and if you have to further deep dive into what is it that is impacting your conversions at a top level, right? The first thing that you really do is you divide them based on channels. You have traffic coming from different sources. Those sources might be, as I've mentioned over here, those sources might be SEM, they might be paid social, and they might be driving traffic to your landing page. Uh, you might have some traffic coming into your website directly. You might have some traffic coming to your website from SEO. Some traffic might be coming from the social organic posts that your team does, and some traffic which is coming from referrals. Right. What you try to do then is you try to build out a funnel for each of them. Right? You take direct as a channel and try to build a funnel for direct. So in case of direct, you're not using any platform. You're not using a Facebook or a Google, so you don't have any additional metrics. Then the last metric that you have in your funnel is basically sessions, right? You're not spending any money on getting the direct traffic, so you don't have the amount spend metric that you have over here. And then you calculate different funnel ratios. Okay. Now you zoom into the other channel, which is SEO. Now SEO has the same funnel that you have for the entire business, but SEO is also done on Search Console, right? So Search Console gives you clicks and your impressions. So you have clicks and impressions on your overall Search Console here. You have the total amount spent on SEO. You might not spend any money here, and you might even spend this expenditure would largely be a link building cost. Uh, and then you have the total conversion rate for leads, total percentage of people who attended the free class divided by the total percentage of people who scheduled the free class, SQLs upon attended, conversions upon SQL. These are the same funnel metrics or the funnel ratios that you're kind of keeping a track on at a top level also. You can add any number of funnel ratios or cost metrics, but what is really critical for us is to have this funnel here. This funnel and this amount of money that you're spending in each of these channels will help you derive a lot of metrics over here. You can keep adding like the metric that is important or that you want to track in this model as a derived metric here, right? So I'm not really focusing on the derived metrics. Now you move to SEM. Now SEM is also done on Google AdWords. So you also get clicks over there. You also get impressions over there. So it's kind of a same funnel which you have for SEO. The only difference is that you now have amount spent. You now have CAC. You have CPL. CAC, CPL, etc. would not be very important for SEO because I'm assuming that the amount of money you're spending on getting links built would be very minuscule compared to the amount of money you're spending on SEM. If it is not the case, you should of course model your cost metrics as well. Coming to SEM again, you have a lot of cost metrics here like CAC, your CPL, cost per qualified lead, total cost per session, and total cost per click. Now, a lot of you might ask that why exactly am I having sessions and clicks as separate metrics over here? Because now the reason is because sessions and clicks don't have a very high drop off when you're working in a Google ecosystem, but when you're working in a Facebook related ecosystem, you have a very high drop off from clicks to sessions, right? So it's important to kind of understand what is the CPC versus what is the true cost per session that you're getting from different channels. And then you do the same thing for paid social. Just that in case of paid social, one more cost metric becomes a bit more important, which you don't really measure in terms of paid search or SEM, is cost per thousand impressions, CPM, because it's more of an impression buying than click buying in case of Facebook, and hence these are the models. Now, do we really stop here? This model really gives us what is each of our channel contributing to the overall business. uh, Probably it might not really help us understand what a particular A/B test might help us achieve. What is the specific user journey like when when users come from direct channel, they get disqualified, and they probably end up getting reactivated again, right? I've not really added that flow in here. So but the point that I'm trying to make is that we don't really stop here. We go further inside this model, right? We need to make a zoom in of SEO, right? Let me go into an SEO, right? Now the way you can define SEO is multiple, right? You can break down SEO based on search terms. You can break down SEO in terms of the traffic where you're getting your leads from. But I typically like to do it in this way, that you break down SEO by saying that, okay, what is the total organic traffic that you're getting from your brand keywords? What is the total organic traffic that I'm getting from my core category keywords, which are high converting, have a very high conversion rate? And what is really the amount of traffic I'm getting from category keywords with low conversion rate, right? The way I'm going to zoom in into SEO is very simple. All you need to do is you need to take all the metrics that you mentioned here in the core growth model that you've built and put it out in the SEO growth model. Now break it down in terms of search category. If you want to understand what is the performance of a specific keyword in a brand keyword, you can go further, uh, inside this model. You can break this model down by the number of by the keywords that you have. If you might if you have noticed, I've not really connected the leads with the final conversions after a point of time, because it's very difficult to connect the keyword that you're getting traffic from to the final conversions. If you can do it, that's great. But I thought that in order to keep this a little more simple and easy to implement, it's not something that you should focus on right away, right? So one way of breaking down SEO is to break it down by, first break it down by the search category. Then you can probably break it down by specific keywords or top 5 keywords that you're getting traffic from in each of these categories. Or you might want to break it down by search category followed by the URLs, the top 5 URLs which are giving you traffic in each of these categories, right? If you try to do something similar with SEM, it kind of works very well. All you need to do is again just copy all the metrics from the core growth model that we've built, uh, put it over here, and break this traffic down into 3 different components. That is how I like to do it. Probably you might have multiple categories here, but like I like to break down this into 3 different segments, which is brand, category, and competition, right? You might want to do it in the same way that you've done for SEO. You might want to say that, okay, I want to divide my category keywords into 2, which is, short tail and long tail. Your short tail would be, low conversion keywords. Your long tail would be high conversion keywords, and that works very well. Again, it completely depends on you how you want to model it. Right? We can do the same thing for paid social. For paid social, what we need to do is we just need to divide it based on the audience, because audience is really what matters here, right? You can't really model it based on campaigns, because campaigns keep on changing, but audience really does not, right? And it is mutually exclusive from each other. So this is what I've done. I've just used all the metrics that I've put in the core growth model here, from paid social, and I've added the metrics over here, right? And I'm breaking it down by audience 1. What are my conversions? What are my sales qualified leads? Number of free classes attended, number of scheduled free classes, etc. All the way down to impressions. And you have these cost metrics here, these funnel metrics over here, right? That's it. I believe that is the growth model that you need for this particular category, right? But real life is not so simple, right? Real life does not work in a very simplistic format like this. So let me add a little more spice into this. Right? I think I'll take some amount of time to explain this flow to you all. What I've truly done is that, okay, let this block be here. What I've truly done in this model compared to this model is that I've added two things. Now, what you can do is in this edtech company, you can actually book a free class or actually schedule a free class that you were able to do in the previous model. But apart from that, you are able to convert using a payment link, right? Without booking a free class, you can actually pay a certain amount and enroll for the course, right? You can do this not only at the initial stage of the funnel, at a later stage of the funnel too, right? Now, another complexity over here is that now you are running a reactivation campaigns. So leads from each of these stages, when a user comes and schedules a free class, leads are pushed into your CRM, right? When users have attended a free class but probably did not convert, they are also pushed into your CRM. And leads who have qualified but not really converted at this stage, they are also being put into your CRM. Now, what you really do is that you figure out that okay, all of these leads at different stages are inactive, and you would kind of push them into a reactivation workflow and send them email campaigns or SMS campaigns to reactivate them, right? All of these leads are now coming back at different stages. They are now coming back and getting reactivated at different stages. Some of them get converted using a payment link. Some of them which don't convert, which don't really convert by using a payment link, they get reactivated in the system and they get the sales call again, and the sales team might end up converting them through indirect conversion as well, right? So in this case, we have two different types of conversions. We have an indirect conversion and then we have a direct conversion, right? Let us try to make some kind of equations here in this case. So now your total conversions in this model are equal to the total direct conversions that you're getting. So people who are coming through your payment link at multiple stages. In the initial stage, without scheduling a free class, after scheduling a free class, they get deactivated, but somehow they see your email, they get reactivated, and they end up just directly paying you, right? So these are two use cases where direct conversions are coming into the picture, and then you have the indirect conversions which are coming into the picture. So this is what your total number of conversions looks like, right? Now, your total number of conversions are also a sum of conversions which are coming from fresh leads. So leads which are coming fresh into the system, that is also contributing to your conversions. And then leads which you're getting from these reactivation campaigns are also contributing to your conversions, right? Again, your direct conversions are also a sum of your direct conversions from fresh leads plus direct conversions from reactivated leads. Your indirect conversions are also a sum of indirect conversions from fresh leads plus indirect conversions from reactivated leads. And your conversions from fresh leads are again a sum of direct conversions from fresh leads plus indirect conversions from fresh leads. Conversions from reactivated leads are equal to direct conversions from reactivated leads plus indirect conversions from reactivated leads. I know this is very, very confusing. So let us just quickly jump into an Excel sheet and try to decode this. Okay. So in this case, what you really have is you first have all your conversions. So I'm just going to add a metric called total conversions. And I think I want most of you guys to pay a whole lot more attention here, because this is actually the crux of this entire conversation, right? So now your total conversions are basically a sum of your direct conversions and your indirect conversions. Now you can actually break down your direct conversions into two. Your direct conversions are a sum of your conversions from fresh leads and the sum of your leads coming, the sum of your conversions coming from reactivated leads. And the same thing follows for indirect conversions. And the same thing follows for your fresh leads. Total conversions from fresh leads are basically a sum of conversions from indirect leads and direct leads. I would like to take a small pause over here. Now we have ended up in a situation where we have broken down the topmost metric, which is our total conversions from direct or indirect channel, and then broken it down into two different ways. Now, if I need to zoom in further into this user journey, how do I really do it? Should I zoom in from direct conversions? Should I zoom in from indirect conversions? Or should I zoom in from fresh leads or reactivated leads? Any guesses, guys? I hope all of you are awake and paying attention.
As you can unmute yourself and answer if you want to. You can maybe repeat your question once again, Ankit.
Yeah. So basically, guys, I wanted to further zoom into the process. Like what we've done is we have taken in the previous growth model, right? What we did, we had taken a funnel, and then we had basically zoomed in to that funnel by different channels, right? How do I really zoom in into this model is what I want to ask. How can I divide this model into further smaller parts?
Maybe in terms of sources.
Only in terms of sources, but then uh, if you divide direct conversions in terms of sources, what you'll see is that you have a lot of sources for fresh leads, you have similar sources for your reactivated leads, and you have the same sources for fresh leads. The problem that you'll end up facing is that if you add the amount of money that you have spent from the indirect conversions from fresh leads and direct conversions from fresh leads, you can't really do that, right? Because you're spending on fresh leads, or you're spending on reactivated leads, because that is where your journey starts. uh, but you are basically slicing it out in terms of the outcome, which is the direct conversion. Let me give you a simpler example. uh, Imagine a company which is marketing for cards, different types of credit cards, right? You have one page where you are saying that, okay, buy credit cards. User comes to this page and user selects card type 1, card type 2, card type 3. You are actually spending money to get users on this page, and you will not really be able to model how many impressions you have got for card 1, because you're actually getting impressions for this message to buy credit cards, right? So card 1, card 2, and card 3 really become the outcome of your user journey, but the beginning of the user journey starts from the buying process. Like people are just buying credit cards for you. So the right way to segment this is actually not by using direct or indirect here, is by using fresh and reactivated, because you can't really model the amount of money that you are spending, or the number of impressions you are getting for indirect and or for direct conversions, because you spend some money on Facebook marketing. Some users came and converted through a direct channel. They paid upfront. Some users actually went through the entire sales process and converted, right? You can't really separate these two things out. I hope like I'm being able to explain this point here. Yeah. Okay. So now what we need to do is that we further need to divide this model into fresh leads and reactivated leads. Now, in this fresh leads, what we had over here is we had the entire model up, right? Let us try to do something similar over here. We have some indirect conversions, some direct conversions, and we have the same here for reactivated leads. Now, before becoming a direct conversion, I don't think we have any follow-up stage for the indirect for the direct conversion. But before becoming an indirect conversion, I should really invert this order over here. Before becoming an indirect conversion, a lead is supposed to be a sales qualified lead. Before converting, a lead is supposed to be a sales qualified lead, and before that, a lead is supposed to be attending a free class, and before that, the lead stage is scheduling a free class. I'm just entering the same funnel stage over here. And before this, you had some users who were coming to your website and becoming sessions. We have a very similar kind of a flow over here. Now, in terms of fresh leads, this funnel is very clear, right? You drive some traffic on your website, you make them fill up a lead. Some of them become a qualified lead. Out of them, some people become a sales qualified lead. Right? Out of them, some people convert indirectly, some people convert directly. Right? In case of reactivations, there are a few other metrics that you need to focus on, because reactivation is basically the total leads that are there in the system who we are kind of reactivating, right? So what we really need to model out here is total number of leads that we reactivated. And the other metric over here is if we were able to reactivate, let's say 100 leads, right? What we need to understand, how many leads did we send out our communications to? Did we reach out to 1,000 people? Did we reach out to 10,000 people? Because that ratio is very important, and very important for us to have a like tap on, because it will really help us grow, right? So total number of leads targeted is another metric. So now we have our complicated model for this edtech company, which we have broken it down into fresh leads and reactivated leads, and have a funnel here. I'll just do a quick time check to see if I'm on time. Okay, so we are already at 8. I'll try to cover this very quickly. Now what we really need to do is we need to zoom in into our fresh leads, and we need to zoom in into our reactivated leads. Let me choose reactivated leads first, because fresh leads is pretty straightforward and it follows the same principles as we've kind of seen here, right? In terms of reactivated leads, we have the exact same funnel. Probably we are also spending some money. Again, I'm not obviously writing metrics like CAC or cost per qualified lead because they are derived metrics. I'm just focusing on the base metrics that need to be there in this model. Right? So now, what do you do in case of reactivation? You either would have reached out to these leads through an email or a WhatsApp message or an SMS or a web push notification. For the ease of this conversation, I think I'm just considering emails and SMSs to be two channels where you can deactivate your leads from. So in case of emails, what you would do is you would have a similar kind of a funnel again. Some leads which are coming from emails would give you direct conversion. Some leads would give you indirect conversion. Some leads would give you sales qualified leads. Some would give you, I mean, leads would be spread out at each of these stages, right? But before that, what you would also have is total number of clicks, right? Because you will be working on a different platform. Again, the same principle. If you're working on a platform like we did for Search Console or Facebook, you have a few additional metrics, right? These metrics are clicks, number of emails sent, actually number of emails sent will come below, number of emails opened, or number of emails sent. And you of course have these two metrics, which is the total number of leads reactivated or the total number of leads retargeted. I'm just moving it down for better clarity. And you would be spending some amount of money to reactivate these leads, to send these emails. Now you have something similar in case of SMSs. You have the exact same funnel. You have some people who are seeing your SMS and are landing onto your web page, but you don't really have clicks or number of opens because SMS does not allow you to get that data. But of course, you have these two metrics, which are total number of leads that you are targeting through your SMS campaigns and the total number of leads that you are reactivating through your SMS campaign. And this basically breaks down the overall reactivation flow. Reactivation flow broken down by different channels. Do we need to further break down here, right? I think we can still break down further in here because what we are actually doing in case of reactivation is that we're not only sending leads to all the inactive leads, we can actually send a different email to someone who has just scheduled a free class and did not attend a free class. Someone who has attended a free class and did not get qualified needs to be communicated a different message, right? And all of these can be customized and reported accordingly. Hence, what we'll really do now. This is something which I'm not going to build out. I'm going to use this view that I've created. This is actually our reactivation funnel breakdown that we've been able to create over here. You can zoom into reactivation by actually every stage, right? Number of people who scheduled a free class and got deactivated after that. What's the total funnel which looks like in terms of the first stage of the funnel, right? At this stage, your campaigns broken down by emails, broken down by SMSs, and you can do the same thing for number of people who are attending a free class, basically at this stage. people who have attended a free class and did not convert later on. And you can do the same thing for number of people who have qualified and have not converted after that, have got deactivated. Right. This model would keep you very focused in terms of figuring out how much are you going to impact if you send an email to people who have scheduled a free class but dropped off after that. You would be able to see that the total number of leads that you're able to target and the total number of leads that you're able to reactivate, how much is it moving the needle. If you change the creative for this particular email versus if you change the creative for an email at this stage, you would have some historical data to be able to say that, okay, what should I really prioritize if I can do only one email at any point of time? Should I prioritize sending or creating a new email for the sales qualified leads, or should I prioritize sending an email for people who scheduled a free class and dropped off after that? Yeah. Now, now we have done this for the reactivated leads. I think what we need to do now is we need to zoom in into the fresh leads. Now in fresh leads, there might be slight complications because you have some people who are converting directly, and probably just so that I capture the entire user journey properly, I might want to capture the total number of sessions on direct conversion page. There would be a page apart from the landing page where you can schedule a free class. There would be a separate page where people can select this is the course that they need and go ahead with a payment link. So just in order to kind of have a view on it, I would keep a specific metric over here and break it down like this. And then in order to get all of these fresh leads, you are spending some amount of money. Yeah. Now, what you do here would not be very different from what we have done over here. Basically breaking this out in terms of different channels that we have. We have first channel as direct traffic. What we do is we just copy all of these metrics from here. And since direct traffic does not really have any money which is getting spent, we remove it from here. We copy the same metrics over here and we can have the model for SEO. And do the same thing for paid social. In case of paid social, we would need to apply the same principles that we have some additional metrics, which is basically clicks and impressions. And we also will be spending some money here. And you can add a bunch of other channels like we've added in the previous growth model. Now, now this basically breaks down our top level flow for this slightly complicated edtech model. What I really want all of you guys to focus on is that you should not really stop at a stage like this, because this Excel sheet is really intimidating right now. What you should do is that you should zoom in into each of these channels, into SEO specifically, into paid social specifically, if you add SEM also specifically, using the same approach that we followed over here, right? And what this entire exercise would end up giving you is a very, very giant Excel sheet. Now, depending on the complexity, or depending on the business size that you guys have, you might or might not need a very complicated model, and that is where you would have to take a subjective call at, which level of complexity you need to stop, right? You can keep adding more and more cuts to make it more and more complicated, but it should not be more complicated than what you need. So that is uh, some some kind of balance that you'll have to maintain. But yeah, overall, this is what will give you the overall growth model. uh, what I would do is I would be sharing a growth model for the flow that I've built over here, for this flow as well as for this flow, with a bit more details than I've been able to cover over here in this workshop. But what it would cover is basically a breakdown of each of these channels, which I've shown in the previous growth model, right? So after the session is over, you guys will receive a link with a growth model, and hope all of you are able to apply this growth model in your specific business cases, and are able to get some benefit out of it. So yeah, that's all I really had for today's presentation. Would be open for questions now.
Thanks a lot, Ankit. This was really what we call a detailed workshop, you can say. So probably a lot of it has to do with the way you work, I believe. I guess the way you are explaining each of the cells. I believe you like to go in details and do it. So really,
Oh yeah.
really glad that you did it for us. So guys, we can now have the Q&A coming up for Ankit. So if you guys have any questions, you can unmute yourself, or probably you can just type it in the chat section below. Uh, Meanwhile, you guys go ahead. I'll start it off. So I asked this to most of the people, and since this is very much centric to growth, not specific about any particular vertical of marketing or any specialization, when we talk about growth, there are a lot of myths around it, right? People have created a lot of buzz around growth, and if you look it on LinkedIn, I say to a lot of people that community. First word is community, and second word is growth. These two words have been used, probably misused a lot. Okay, and
Exactly.
hence I would like to hear it from you that which is that one big myth that you hear about growth marketing or growth in general that you would like to bust.
Yeah, of course. I think because this myth is very, very close to me in terms of uh, facing that myth myself in different organizations that I've been working with. I've already covered that. The biggest myth I believe is, growth is just a function which helps you acquire some traffic on your website, and in our case, helps you fill up the form. But growth needs to be looked at in a more holistic way. Growth is actually a combination uh, of product marketing, engineering, as well as data analytics, right? So that I believe is the biggest myth that we need to bust.
All right, thank you for answering this. Now we have questions coming up already for you. So Ram Prasad wants to ask you that how do you measure the conversion based on branded and non-branded keywords in SEO? Guess there is no way to measure this unlike SCM, Google Ads.
Yeah, so you really can't measure it very, very specifically. If you want to measure it directionally, you might need to add some tags, or fire some parameters. I think my intention was not really to understand the conversion rate. I think I might have made a mistake if I've entered the sessions over there, but the intention was really to understand the total traffic, or the impressions that we're getting from each of these type of keywords. Yeah. So breaking down your SEO into uh, 4 or 5 different types of keywords, and understanding what is the search behavior and not really the conversion behavior.
I guess you got okay. You got your answer. Thank you. Now the next question is from Harshala, and she wants to ask which channel would one start off with and then gradually work on. How to decide that?
Which channel would you start off with? That's actually a very, very good question, right? If it was if you are talking about a company which is just starting off, right? What I would really try to do is I would try to capture the search market, because people who are searching for your product or for your category really have a demand for your category. They are really they want to buy something from you. So I would really focus on search first, and because SEO takes some more time, what I would do is I would prioritize SEO as number two, but parallelly start working on the push channels like Google Discovery, like Facebook or Google Display Ads, etc. Depending on again which category are you in, right? That's how I would like to approach it.
Right. Okay, Pratyaksh had asked the question earlier. The question is, please include something about hiring your team. I mean, how to approach hiring in marketing. I have to like he wants to know much about more about how you go about hiring for a particular position in marketing department.
Wow, that's really a tough question that Pratyaksh has thrown at me. But uh, I mean, what I really try to do in terms of hiring is that I want to look at, or I might want to work with people who are better at something that they are going to own than I am, right? That is one of my benchmarks in terms of hiring. If I'm looking to hire someone to run SEO, I really need to be confident that this person can do SEO better than what I can do, right? That's the number one check. The second thing which is very important is that the person should have a very kind of go-getter or action biased attitude. It should not be in theory, right? You can have a lot of conversation, you can have a lot of good theory around it, but until unless it reflects in actions, it does not really make any sense. So I think these two principles, if you're able to understand if the person is faring well on these two principles, I would go ahead with the hiring.
All right, Pratyaksh, I guess you had your answer and yeah, all right, thank you. Now moving on to your colleague is asking you one question. How do
Okay.
you operate when there are questions about data accuracy? And I have
Okay.
a following question to the same because I am also experiencing I had experienced something similar to this. So yeah, probably once you answer this then.
Yeah, exactly. So what I believe is that data uh, in all the companies that have kind of have spoken to someone or have consulted also, what I've seen is that data accuracy is generally a problem, especially if the business does not happen online. In our case, at Lipspace, business happens offline, and hence there are a lot of data inaccuracy issues. But I mean, you should not really stop running the engine, because I mean, you're not stopping to run marketing till you sort data accuracy, right? So I think what you should do is you should always try to strike a balance between data accuracy and running the show, right? So that is again what I would try to do if I had to fill in a growth model like this, which is very very complicated. I can understand, Kunz, that a lot of these things might not be we might not be able to fill up all of these at any point of time, but I would try to fill up all of these cells as much as possible.
Got it. And why I was very much interested in this question is because I believe, after having a word with a couple of my folks, I believe 95% of the companies operating in the ecosystem are having 99% of data inaccuracy, to be very honest. Like most of the times, either their Tableau is not updated, either GA is not tracking the right data and all those stuff. So it makes life
Right.
for all the growth marketeers much horrible.
Exactly. And what really happens is that this this kind of keeps compounding, because you have inaccurate data. Once you don't go ahead and solve it,
That's the
it keeps getting compounding and showing up more inaccuracies in the future. So I think what we should really do is, at one point of time, we should pause and we should really focus on solving the data problems that we have.
correct. Thank you. I guess Kunz, you got your answer. Now moving on to the next question. Since we are running short of time, what you can do, Ankit, is that you can have a hard stop of 60 seconds for answering all of these questions. So,
Okay, sure.
yep. So now next question is for a recently launched free app, how do you think growth slash acquisition should be looked at? Now, this is something
Recently launched free app.
launched free app, yeah, for a recently
Ah,
launched free app. Raja, would you like to unmute yourself and tell us a little bit more about this app so that it would be much
that would be
easier for Ankit if you're able to hear me? Raja, are you there? Ankit, would you like to answer this question with this particular
Yes,
details or yeah?
got it. No, yeah, I'll answer this question. So I think Raja, what the kind of metrics that you would have in case of a free app would be completely different. What I've covered today is basically a funnel based approach. What you would like really try to understand is your acquisition and retention curves. So at any point of time, the total your only metric in case of a free app would be the total number of active users, and your total number of active users would be a sum of the new users that you acquire in a particular month plus the a sum of retention of your previous months. So the total number of active users in month 3 would be equal to total number of new users you acquire in month 3 plus the total number of users which are getting retained from month 0 to month 3, right? That is how I would look at it. The modeling would be slightly different.
All right. Now moving on to the next question. So Pragriti wants to ask you how customer lifetime value can impact growth.
So yeah, that's actually a very interesting question. Customer lifetime value is something which is actually similar to retention. In the growth model that I have covered, I've not really covered retention as a use case because I mean it would make things a whole lot more difficult. But yeah, customer lifetime value is actually very very important for growth. But you would not see depending on again the kind of industry that you're coming from, if it's a small ticket item purchase or it's more kind of a frequent purchase, it would really have an impact in the short term for about 6 to 12 months. In case you are in a business model where you have a model like LiveSpace, you don't really have a lifetime value use case.
All right. Thank you, Ankit, for answering this. And yeah, Harshla, by the way, I read your question just now. I guess Rahul also wants to ask you the same thing. So yes, we will be sharing the link to this presentation as well as this whole conversation is recorded as well. And apart from that, as a gesture to this community, Ankit is also sharing the sheet that he has worked on in front of us, probably in a much detailed way, so that you can refer to it. So that is something really fascinating for us, all of us. Now, moving
Yes.
on to the next question.
So
Yeah, I have a
not
question from Ram Prasad wherein he's asking tool for marketing automation, both web and mobile, for the entire user journey, stranger to loyal.
well, I mean, I would not say that one tool is better than the other because tool is basically uh, a way for you to kind of navigate through a business process. You can achieve the same thing using multiple tools. All that you should kind of evaluate is that which tool is better fitted in your tech stack, which kind of tool is better suited for all the requirements that you have that you can kind of think of in the next 6 to 12 months. And based on that you can actually go ahead and prioritize your selection of the tool.
Got it. All right, Ankit. So I guess this would be the last question that I'm going to ask you, and this is something that I try to ask most of the people I have a conversation with. So since we have a lot of people a part of this community, and the idea of this community was to learn and grow together. So is there any resource that you would like to share, or any website, or any particular people that all of us should follow or should look up to in order to learn more about growth and advancement that is coming right now in the ecosystem?
Definitely. I actually like to follow these two people very very frequently for any of my questions that I face. I like to follow Andrew Chen and Brian Balfour. Both of them are really gurus of growth marketing, but a lot of their knowledge is largely focused towards SaaS based ecosystem or product driven companies. But you can of course look at their approach and try to incorporate the same in your use case, right? So I think I would really urge all of you to follow Andrew Chen and Brian Balfour. And one particular video in general, I think a lot of my slides also were kind of inspired from this video by Brian Balfour. It's called Building a Growth Machine, right? So it really talks about how do you build a growth organization within your company with growth at the center of its DNA.
All right. Yeah, Pragriti. Probably I'll just type it down. Ankit, can you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can actually send it to you in the email that I'm going to send the growth model in, right?
Perfect.
That would make sense. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I guess that would be it for the day. Thank you, Ankit, first of all, for doing this for us. It was lovely hosting you, and the informations and the points that you had to share was really detailed one, and I personally enjoyed a lot. So thanks a lot for doing this.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Ayush. Thank you everyone for joining in and spending your time. I hope this was useful to all of you.